Okay, good afternoon. Right, so today we want to do our final topic in web development under PHP, that is connecting to databases. So last time we discussed about form handling, form handling. So your final subtopic is database handling. Okay, right. So I have already started my SAM server. Okay. Because it's database handling, I have started my MySQL also, right? Because first we are going to create a small database with just one table because you don't get complicated questions. And then we are going to do sort of insert, delete, and retrieve data from that particular database. So simple as that, right? So we already have a table. Remember we did created some tables when we do database subject sometimes back. So therefore I already have employee table with employee ID, name, salary, and department ID. And also I have the department table as well. Uh, okay, so let's create a different table. Will not, okay, we can use the employee table, right? But I will not be using the department ID field, but I'll be using employee ID. No, I will create a table called user. Okay, right. So let's create a table called user. Right. I'll call it user. Uh, ID. Okay, let's call it user ID. Integer, not null, and it must be your primary key. So therefore index must be primary. Of course, using SQL also you can create this, okay? Right. So that is my ID column. Close this. Right. So I have created the ID column. Let's say name, which is I will go for variable character, say size 10, and maybe password. Right. Use ID, name, and password. So password also I will make it Vacha. Maybe 10. Right. So I have three fields and my primary key is use ID. Okay. Uh, if I want, I can create use ID auto number field as well because then it's easier, right? So let's make it auto number field so that we don't need to insert a number. So how to do that? You just tick AI, auto increment. So then we don't need to insert value for the user ID. Okay, so use ID, name, password. So I'll say save it. Right. So I have a table now called user. Okay, user, and still no data. Right. Now we are going to create a small form so that new user can be inserted. Okay. Right. So this is how we are going to do it. So let me go to the CSAM, because I am using the SAM server. C SAM htdocs because I am using SAM server. Remember we created a folder called AL ICT 25 last time. Okay. Right. So there I will create a subfolder for database related examples. Okay. So then our URL will be localhost AL ICT 25 slash, let's say DB. Okay. So therefore, it will be local loss A-level ICT DB. Okay, and I'll call this uh, insert dot. This can even be HTML because I'm not going to write any PHP code here, but I will save it as PHP, but I will not write any PHP code here. And this is just our form so that user can input the username and password. Okay. Let me close other things. Right. So HTML tag, end of HTML, head. I'm doing this little bit slowly because database is little bit advanced concept. Right. So I'll create a form. Maybe you know how to create a form, right? We have already discussed that. Form tag, form tag, and form tag, form tag. Method I will make it get so that I can see the data, but in reality, usually we go for post. Okay. And action, that is what the data is submitted. You need to create a PHP file for that also. I'll call it insert action. So just to make it meaningful, okay? .php. And this one I'm going to create later. Okay, let's create that file also. I'll call it insert action. Right, insert action. For the time being, I will say thank you for the input or something like that. Okay. No form there. Say H1. Say use new user is created, but actually we have not done it yet. This is just a dummy message. Okay. Right. So now I've create my form, finish my form. So let's have a label. Say, because user ID is going to be auto number. We are not going to ask user to enter that. But username and password, yes. Say username. Label is optional, you know that. And of course, input type equal text. Make sure you give a name because the name is the one that we use in the server to access this value, right? We discussed that last week. I'll call it maybe you name or something. It must be just a name. Right? Yeah, that's it. If you want, you can give ID, but ID is optional because we are not doing any CSS or anything like that. And I will have two BRs just to make it nice. Or you can have a div. Right. So now we'll add another field that is password. This is not logging. This is creating a new user. Okay. We just collect username and password. And I will make it a password field so that password cannot be seen by others rather than text. I'll call it you password or something. Right. So now I have the two fields. Now I need the submit button. I will add the reset button also. I will use input tag. Or if you want, you can use a button tag. Type reset. This is my reset button. I'll call it clear or something. I will add two spaces just to separate the two buttons because I'm going to add another button and just to make it little bit nice. Okay. But no BR because I want the two buttons in the same line. So this is my submit button. Still, we are not doing any database related things. I'll call it submit. This is just a form. Okay. Now let's see local lost A-level ICT 25, not hello. Then DB because remember we created a folder called DB and there insert PHP. Right. So this is my PHP. Okay. Why is it saying submit query? Uh, submit. Right. So this must be type name. Yeah. We need to have a value. So sorry. Uh, so this name must be anything. Okay. Let's say name is reset again. Actually, the value is the one that is displayed in the button, right? Value. So therefore, let's say value. I'll call it clear because it's a value that is displayed. Okay. So name I will call it submit. Value I'll call it submit with S capital just to make it nice. Okay. Right now I should get the proper value for the button because the value was not there earlier. Right. So the clear button submit button. So clear button will clear whatever you type because it's a type clear. And when you submit, say Nalaka 123. Of course, you should be able to see it in the query string that we discussed last time because it's a get method. But usually when you create a new user or something with password, we don't use get, rather we use post, but we use get because if there are issues, we can easily see here. Okay. And then it has displayed the PHP file, insert action file, which I just created a dummy one. And I just give a message, new user is created. So that is why we got it. Okay. Right. So now our next task is access the submitted values in the server so that we can insert it to the table because this new record must be inserted. Okay. Right. So how to access this? So that you need to do using PHP file or PHP. You know how to add PHP block? Question mark. Okay. Right. So you can get it from $_get because I'm using get or even request work. Okay. Right. So I'll call this $name that is $_get. Okay. What is the name we use? You need to use the same name as your name. That is your name. Your name. So this is nothing new, right? This is what we discussed last class. So then the password, I will just call it password. These are PHP just we are declaring new variable and we call that u password, right? Yeah, u password. Make sure you use the exact word, otherwise you will get errors. Right. So we will just double check by echo, but we will later comment that line. Okay. $name. So this is what we do, right? Code a little, test a little, and maybe a BR so that it goes to the next line. And later we will comment these two lines because first I want to double check whether we get the value of submitted values. Okay. Right. Then we'll create the new record in the table. Right. Back, refresh, say 123. Yes, Nalaka 123, new user is created. But actually the new user is not yet created because it's just a dummy message. Now our task is, because the objective of this page is to let a user create a new account. So new account means we must have a new entry in the user table. But right now user table has no record. Okay, user table has no record. Right, how to do that? So now we are going to work with databases. MySQL database from PHP. Right, so these are the basic operations we do. First of all, you need to connect to the database. So you need to get a connection to the database. Get a connection to the database. How to do that? And so these are the three steps. Get a connection to the database. Then do your SQL, run your SQL. Because you know that insert statement is there, select statements are there, update statements are there, delete statements are there. You can run your SQL. So then you need to close the connection, database connection. Right. So these are the three steps. So whenever you work with databases, you need to do these two. And this is the thing that will be different for different operations like insert, update, delete, retrieve. But these are the same. And also when it comes to connecting to databases from from PHP, when you connect to MySQL, there are three ways. So if you want to little bit get a big picture, the best place is go to W3 schools, right? Just do a search W3 schools PHP tutorial. Don't just W3 schools PHP and go down to the database. Now it MySQL database. Right? So there you need to create a connection and do your work and disconnect. Okay. And there are examples for each and every insert, right? Select, delete, and everywhere you will see there are three versions of examples. Right? Listen to me very carefully. So whenever there's a code example, you will say this is MySQLi object-oriented code. And this is MySQLi procedural code. That is the second version. So then the third one is PDO code. So that means doing the same thing, but three different ways. Okay. Say selecting data. This is MySQLi object-oriented code. This is MySQLi procedural code. And this is MySQLi PDO code. PDO code. And even for something like delete, MySQLi object-oriented code, MySQLi procedural code, and obviously the PDO code. Okay. Right. In your syllabus, definitely you don't have the PDO. That is, you don't have the third one. Right. So in some exam papers, they have used bit of procedural and bit of object-oriented. Okay. So that is unfortunate. Bit of procedural, bit of object-oriented. But the last few years, the examiners in the marking scheme, they are sort of 100% concentrating on object-oriented. So therefore, just concentrate on this MySQLi object-oriented codes. Okay, even if it is select, just concentrate on that is usually the first code in W3 schools tutorials. Okay, so make sure you refer to the MySQLi object-oriented. Our note is also pretty much MySQLi object-oriented. Right. So therefore, I'm not going to explain you PDO or procedural. And that is another reason why we did little bit of PHP object-oriented concept. What is a class? How to add attributes and behaviors, methods and variables, and then how to create object and call the behaviors and refer to a data. So that we did last class, okay? That we did last class. under OP, right? So we created a small class, add a instance variable or variable, add a function or method, and we discuss how to refer to a variables like X and how to call your methods. But in order to do that, first you need to create object. That is how the object-oriented work. So do you have any questions about that? Because we did it last class. And these days, almost every year, there's a PHP database connectivity question. Okay. In the second paper, part one, right? And on all these past paper, the recent past paper questions to connect to database, they have used object-oriented approach. So it's a database connection object we create. Okay, so therefore I will be only concentrating on this MySQLi object-oriented approach. MySQLi is the library we use to connect to the database from PHP. So that library is already available in your Apache web server. So therefore you don't need to worry, right? It's always working. You don't need to configure anything. If you have MySQLi running and if you have your Apache server configured for PHP, in our case, we use SAM. You don't need to do anything else. Just you can write your code and do. But make sure your MySQL server is running and you have a table, database and at least one table. Right. So it's a three-step process. What are those three steps? First, we need to create a connection. Right. We need to create a connection. So now we are going to create the connection. And now we have retrieved the two data. Now we are going to create a connection. So create a connection. Then do the insert or execute the SQL. And then close the connection. So far in the exam, they have not asked you to write the code, but sometimes they have asked you to fill like part of the code. Or the code is given and they ask what is the purpose of this line, that line, and so on. Okay. Right. So this is how you create a connection if you are using object-oriented approach, MySQLi object-oriented approach. Right. You just need to create a connection object. There's a class called MySQLi. Right. Your task is create an object of that particular class. Okay. So let me do it here because now we have retrieved the two data from the form. So MySQLi method has 4 parameters. Either you can use 3 parameters or 4 parameters. I will be using the 4 parameter version. So the first parameter is your database server name. So server name is basically local host because we are running, in my case, database is also running in the same machine. Right? This laptop, I am having the database also, and also my web server. Both web server and database is running in the same machine. So therefore, my application refer to the same app, same computer. So now the name for same computer is what? Local host. So that is why when we go to this URLs also we type right, local host, right? A-level-ICT 25 DB. Local host. Local host means same machine. So then you need to give the username. So when you install SAM, you get a default username and password that is root, and the password is blank. Blank means just start, close quotes, end quotes without a space. Don't even type space. Then you will get error. So this is the default username and password. But if you have created your own users, you can give your username and password. Of course, in practically commercial applications, we don't use root and blank because that everyone can guess it. Rather, we will create a new user account and give those. And that is, this is server name. It can be IP address if it is a different, your web server is in a different machine from your database server, then that database server machine's IP address. Because database is also running in my machine, I use localhost. So this is the default users created when I install Apache SAM server. For the MySQL, there's a user called admin user called root. Its password is blank. And the fourth parameter is database name. Right? In our case, we have created our table in the database called AL-ICT 2025. So you must give the correct database name. AL-ICT 2025. Okay. That is how you create a connection. And once you create the connection, you can check whether connection is successfully established. So therefore, this line is sort of everywhere we will be writing this line for each and every operation. That is why I just copy pasted it. Then I will show that in the past papers also the same code is there. So remember this is we are creating object. We are creating object. So just like we created a foo object. So then once you create an object from a class, only thing is this object is from a class which PHP has already created. Right? This is not a class we created. We just create object of that built-in, we call them built-in classes. Already this class is available in PHP. But we just create object. But last week, what we did is we created a class, and from that class, we created object. So the only missing thing is class is not there because class is already created by Apache Web Server or the PHP. But we created the object. Right? So our object was MySQL. Right. Now, remember, if you are referring to attribute or property, you use this notation. When you are calling a method also, you use this notation. Hyphen greater than size. Okay. So then if you want to check whether the connection is correct, right? Connection is received. It's super easy. Uh, this can be any variable name. Even you can call it X. If you call it X, then this must be also X. Okay. Uh, but let's call it something like meaningful just to make it meaningful because it's basically a database connection. I'll just call it dollar con. Okay, just any name. Okay, even XY is it. So this is object of MySQLi class, and this class has a instance variable or variable called connect underscore error. Right. So this is something which is available to us. And if there's a connection error, it will give you true. That means the connect error is a Boolean variable, it will be true. But if there's no error, no connection error, it will be false. So therefore, if there is no error, this will be false and you will not come to the if, you will skip if. But if there is an error in the connection, this will be true. So therefore, your control will come inside the if loop, if condition. That is, if connection is failed or there's error. And if so, we just give it an error message. Connection failed. And also this connection object or MySQLi object has another property called connect. So the same property. It gives you this connection error message or the error string. So this is a little bit tricky because this behaves as a Boolean variable as well as string variable. Same property. Okay. Same property. And we can use something like print or echo, but most of the time what we use is not print or echo. Of course, print will perfectly work. Okay. Right. So otherwise we will say echo, that is last statement. Done. Right. Now, if there is no error, it will simply say done because you don't go to the if, because connection error is then false. So if it is false, it won't go to the if. But there's an error, connection error will be true. It will go to the if condition and it will give this error message, and this property will be having the more detailed error message, and then it will say done. Okay. Now let's see whether I can successfully connect to the database using this username, a server name, username, password, and the database name. Connecting to the MySQL database server. Okay. Right. I have saved everything. And when I submit, remember this page is getting called. It will echo these two, and then it will create the object, database connection object. In case there's an error, I should see the error. Otherwise, it will just, I should see the error and done. Otherwise, I should see only done. So done means no errors. Now let's do it. I refresh this. I'll say Nalaka 123 password and say submit. And it says done. You can see done. That means no error. That means I have not inserted the record, but I have successfully connected to the database. Okay. For example, when are we going to get this error? Maybe your database name is wrong because there's no database called AL-ICT 20256. Now, if I submit, I should get error for the connection. So therefore, it will come to the if and it will give the error message with connection failed, and then it will say done. Okay, right now let's, because I changed the database name to a wrong database now. Okay, right. I will again submit. Now we can see fatal error says unknown database A-level ICT 20256 because there is no such database. Not 20256, it's 2025. But we try to connect 20256. Okay. So that is error. That is error. And when there's error, usually your web server will stop executing. So therefore, anyway, you can see that this line is not executed, done. You can see, you can't see done in your output, right? There's no done. So because if there's an error, it will not proceed beyond that. So that is why software developers often use, rather than print or echo, there's another method called die. That is what we usually use. Okay, die. So the difference between die, you know that print and echo has pretty much the same functionality, right? Print and echo, but print is a function, echo is a statement. Die is a function, die is 99% same as print, but print will print and do the rest of the stuff. It will try to execute the rest of the stuff. But when you have a database connectivity error, no point executing beyond this. Because if there's a database error, no point attempting to insert a record. So therefore, we have another function called die. So the difference between die and print is print will print and go to the next statement. Die will print and stop the execution from that line onwards. So that will be the last line to execute because no point going forward because there's no database connectivity. So therefore, in exam papers also, you will see almost all the time die statement rather than print statement. Okay. So, but you can just think of die statement as a print statement, same as print, but only thing is, if you come to the die statement, it won't execute beyond that. Okay. Right now I have changed it back to die. Now I should get the same error. Same error. Now I will fix that error by making the database name correct. Now I should not get any error. I should get done. Okay. Because it will not go into the if condition now. Right. So it says done. Is it clear? That is how you create a database connectivity object. MySQLi object, you need to give the server name. If it is the same machine, localhost, otherwise it's the IP address of that machine. Then the username, password. In our case, username is root, password is blank. That is the default username and password for the SAM MySQL server and the database name. Right. So then we need to execute our SQL. And finally, you need to close the connection. So why do you close the connection? So when you do something, uh, it is always best practice to release that connection to the database, because otherwise you keep some resources, right? Memory, processing power, because database will think that this application might send me more and more SQL statement through this connection. So therefore, database is not going to terminate the connection unless timeout. So timeout period is usually configurable in MySQL database server. That is again, we are not going to touch how to do that. So usually it's about 10 seconds, it's about 10 minutes and so on. Okay. So then after that time period, anyway, your connection will be disconnected. But if we don't want to wait for another 10 minutes or whatever, so once we do the task, the best practice is just close the connection, right, by ourselves rather than let it time out. Right? How to close the connection? It's super easy. Your object, your connection object or your MySQLi object, right? We call it con. It has a method called close. So this is how you call methods, right? This is how you refer to variables and methods in object-oriented way. Okay, right. So therefore, make sure you close it. Otherwise, you may lose some marks in the exam also. You connect it, check the connectivity, and die if there are errors. Then do your work and then close the connection. Okay, right. Now we are going to do the work. What is our task? Insert the record to the user table. Right. So our first task is create, because our applications, whether it's PHP or Python or Java or C Sharp, it's going to send a SQL statement. So therefore, first let's create the SQL statement. You can give any name, even X, but usually we call it SQL as a convention. And now you can write your SQL statement. What is your SQL statement? Because it's insert, right? That is database knowledge. Insert into user. I will specify the fields also. Then values. Right. I will not specify the user ID, because user ID we make it auto number. Right. We made it auto number. So therefore I will not give a value to the user ID, because no point. But I will give the value of name and password, which I retrieve from the submitted values. So therefore I need name, comma, password. User ID is missing because I ex excluded that, because anyway the system is going to give you the next auto number, auto number, auto number. Now I need the values. So values we already have. What are those values? This variable has the username, comma. This variable has password. This is POH, my SQL statement. Only thing is these values are taken from variables. And if you want, you can have codes here. It's optional, because these are varchar fields. But if those are number fields, don't use it. But again, it's optional as well. And make sure you have the semicolon at the end. Remember, in SQL, we have the semicolon. It's optional, but it's always good to have the semicolon. Right. So this is the SQL that we are going to execute. And we are going to insert name and password because user ID is going to be auto number. Using the user name will be the name user has submitted. Password will be the user submitted password. Right, this is just the SQL state. Now we need to execute it. Right, we need to execute it. And so let's take it under SQL execution. Right, how to execute this insert statement? It's super easy. Whether it's insert or update or delete, the way is the same. Right. So your connection has your connection has a method called query. Query. You just execute it, and if it returns true, right? If this method returns true, execution is success. Otherwise, if there's error, you will get something like false. So therefore, it is good idea to okay. Let's just call it for the time being, assuming that no errors, and we just call it. So remember, this is our MySQLi object. We call it $con. It has a method called query. To that method, I have sent this particular variable. Otherwise, I could have write the SQL statement inside here within double quotes. And then we close it. I have not done any error handling. I assume that this insert SQL statement is valid and it will be successfully executed in the database. But later we will do the error handling. Now let's see whether it's work. Right? Let's see whether it's work. I have saved this page because now we retrieve the two submitted values, create a connection object, check whether connection has any errors, build our SQL and execute the SQL against the connection and then close the connection. If everything goes well, after submission, right, I must be having a record here. Now, still when I go to browser, it says nothing, no records, right? Here you can see nothing. Now let's submit and see whether the record is inserted. Say Nalaka. I'll say, okay, let's use different name also. Say Asmi and password is 321. And let's submit and see. It says error. What is that? It says it can't understand what is $con is. On line 23, you can see all the details are there. So that means I have made a small typing mistake somewhere. Not somewhere on possibly line 90, line 23. Right? In insert action PHP file. Right? Line 23. So this is insert action. Line 23 is here. So what is wrong with this? $con query. And we are giving $SQL. It looks okay, right? Why am getting error? So why is it error? I do not get a connection error also. Unexpected variable $con. Maybe semicolon missing in the previous line there. No, right? This semicolon is there. At the end of this line, you need to have a semicolon, right? So that is missing. That is definitely there. So here you need to have a semicolon because it's a PHP variable declaration. So this semicolon, I wrote this as a semicolon. Actually, this semicolon is optional because we have only one SQL statement, but this is semicolon is a must. So now that error must be resolved. So this semicolon, because every statement must have a semicolon, right? I forgot about that semicolon because I added it here. Now it's in the correct place. Right, now I can again send, say 3, 2, 1. Still you get an error. Why is that? $con. Line number 26. Now line number 26. This semicolon is also missing. You can see. Because this semicolon is missing, it think that this line is a continuation of this one. So now I have fixed that one also, right? So that is why you need to do this practically, right? So I forget to add this semicolon. Now I have added it. Okay. Now there should not be an issue. Actually, now the record must also be there because by the time the error comes, the record must have been already inserted. So, okay. So therefore, let me double check and see whether the record is there. I'll go to the browser, browse. No, still the record is not added because possibly because of that error. Okay. Right now we have fixed that issue also. Uh, so therefore now let's resend the uh, request. Okay. So let's say 3 to 1 again. Now it says no error. So no error. So possibly now the record must be there. Okay. So I'll refresh it. And you can see 1 ask me 3 to 1. So yes, record has been added. Right. Record has been added. So now we have successfully added a record from our web application to the MySQL table. Don't worry, I will share you the code, but you must familiar with this code. Okay. Now, if you have more fields, of course, you need to have those in your form, right? More input fields and so on. Then make sure you get it from the dollar underscore get array and include that into your insert statement. Maybe another field and another value. Okay. And of course, if it is a numeric field, you don't need these ports. Okay. It's optional. Right. Any question? Now we have done the insert statement. Insert statement. Using MySQLi object-oriented approach. So we got a connection object and it has connection error property to check whether connection has errors. And also it has a query beat method where you can send your SQL and close. And remember, still we do not do any error handling here because when we execute this, there can be error. There can be error because this data is missing. Maybe my SQL statement is not correct. So that is where you need to check whether there is an error. So in the exams, usually they expect that. How to do that? When you call that method, it returns true or false. True means no error. False means there's error. Okay. So therefore, rather than you just call it, because it has a return type, right? So let's put it into a if condition. If so, this same statement, if it is true, capital TRUE, okay? If it is true, that means success. If it is not true, right, it is not success. Right? It is not success. So you can use 3 equal mark, that means exactly equal. So that means success. Now my success message, I will put it there because this is hard coded. Because you can't say always new user is created, there can be error. So here I'll say echo, maybe in H2 or H3, user added or created. Okay, and let's finish our H3, small heading. Else, that means it is not true means definitely the connection is no issue. If connection has issues, it won't come beyond that. But this execution has error. That is why you don't get true. So then you can say maybe error. And you can even give you the error message. How do you give the error message? Again, there's a property called error that has detail about your error message. Okay, so I would say another H3 error in user creation. Maybe we can give a little bit of more details. Right? Concatenate, that is $con dot error, and then we will close our H3. H3. Okay, H3. So either you get the success message or error message. Error message. So else means this does not return true. That means there should be error. We just give it error and we get the technical error message from the connection object, because if there is error, your connection object has its error property must be having the error, which is specified by the server. Of course, we are not going to get error because this is correct. Okay. But let me do something. Right. So let me insert another one, say Raju. Let's call the, okay. What happened? Right. Raju, I'll call it secret. Okay. Password is secret. Now I will submit. Right. User created. So there's a slash here. This one. Okay. Right. User created. So that means the new record must have been added. Let's double check. Just refresh. Yes, Raju. Okay. Right. But if you get, for example, you know that our field with these 10 characters. So what happens if you add more than 10 characters? Then it will be error, right? Probably. Let's see whether we get error. I'll say username is Kamala. Password I will add more than 10 characters. Right? Some weird more than 10 characters. Now this is definitely more than 10 characters. So let's see whether we get an error now. Right. So still no error. I think it has accepted that. Yes, it has accepted. That means password width has not been. Let's see its structure. Password. We specify the size, but anyway, it has taken more than 10 characters. So forget about that. Forget about that. So let's assume our SQL has an issue. So let's say I have made a small mistake, like into X. Now I should get error. So therefore I should get the error message here. Okay. Right. Now let's submit. I will again submit. Now you can see uncode MySQL exception. You have error in your SQL syntax. So that error is coming from where? That coming from this else part. else part. And this is error in user creation. So it should be somewhere there. Where is that? You can't see that message also, right? Anyway, the message is there, but that message is also not there. Okay. But anyway, now you can see there's error, right? There's error uh, because this doesn't give you true. Okay, this doesn't give you true. Now I'll again fix that error by making it delete index. Okay. So therefore, make sure that you handle errors also, right? So there are two places you need to handle error. This is checking whether the connection has error after the object creation. This is whether your query execution is success. If it is success, it must be true. Then you can refer to the error property to refer to the error message. Here you refer to the connect error property and make sure you close it. So that is how you insert data. Okay, insert data. Now we have, I think, 3 records in our table. Right, 3 records. Remember the user ID is auto number. Therefore, when I insert another record, it will be 4. That is why I selected auto increment when I create the table. Right. Do you have any question related to insert statement? So already they have asked about insert in structured paper. So make sure you create the SQLi object, close it, check the connection error, and after execution using query method, make sure you check whether it's true or false. If it is true, success. If it is false, not success. Okay. Right. Now we will execute or implement deleting a username user because we will keep the retrieve for the last because retrieve have more steps. Say someone want to delete maybe administrator or something, just like I can delete here, but this is from the database from my application. Maybe administrator or manager must be able to delete a user account. How to do that? It's super easy because these steps are going to be the same. Only thing is this SQL statement is going to be delete now. Delete. And also you need a UI so that the user enter either username or the user ID. Okay, so let's make it from username, right? So now I can just copy paste. Uh, I'll copy the insert PHP file and rename it as delete PHP file. Delete PHP file. And here I will say, okay, let's have H1 here. Delete user. H2. Delete user. Just to make it nice. Right. So let's have H2 in our previous one also, right? Because we will make it nicer. And so there we will say insert user. Right. So this is our delete user. In delete user, let's say we delete by username. So therefore you just need one field. I will remove the password, right? Username, and I will call this rather than submit. I will call this delete. And previous one, let's call it insert. Okay. Just to make it nice, rather than submit, I will say insert. And this one, you enter the username and say delete. Delete. And reset button is still there if you want to clear your username. But now my action must be different because I need to submit it to a different action which you delete it. I'll call it delete action. Okay, delete action. Right, so follow some conventions, right? So then your life is so simple, right? So now I need to write the delete action class. Now, of course, I have the delete action, delete form, which you can get it from here, right? Delete. So it has only the username. Then you need to click on delete. But of course, still we have not ordered the delete uh, action class. So therefore, I'll copy the insert action because now you can just copy paste. Rename it as delete action. Right. Only difference is in your delete action, now you don't get a password. You get only the username. Okay, you get only the username. Right. So these things are the same. You get the connection and check the connectivity error. At the end, close the connection. But now our statement is not insert. Our statement is delete. Right. Delete from. Remember the SQL, right? We did that. Delete from user. Okay. Delete from user where this is SQL, right? This is nothing but SQL. Where, because we delete by username, what is the field name in the table? Field name is name, right? Name. Where name equal, we'll have it in the single quotes because it's a varchar field, dollar name, right? Dollar name. So dollar name must be the username that you want to delete, right? That means delete from user where name is say Nalaka. If the user submit Nalaka. So then that record must be because there is a record with name Nalaka here. Okay, Nalaka record is not there, right? So ask me record is there, Raju record is there. So we should be able to delete those. Kamala record is there, right? And rest of the stuff is the same, right? Again, you call the query method. If it is true successful, that means delete is successful. Otherwise, delete is failed, right? So here, rather than user created, I will say user deleted. And error in user deletion. Now done and close. Now let's test that also. Remember there's a, okay, we have a, okay, let me refresh again. Right, 3 records. I'm going to delete Raju. That means R capital, okay? Simple capital also matter. Raju with R capital, right? Let's see. Raju with R capital, and I will say delete. And it says user deleted. That means no error messages. Now we'll refresh again. Now Raju record is not there because our delete statement as well. So that is how you delete a record. That is how you delete a record. Okay. So we discuss how to insert a record, the insert form, and the insert action. So then how to delete a record, our delete form, which is simpler because we just use username, or you can use even use ID, and the delete action because make sure you give a different name. I use the same field name, uname, so therefore again I take it from as uname. But this time we create a delete statement and execute it and close the connection. Right. Any questions? Any question? So I'm doing the minimum essential things. I'm not doing anything more than required because otherwise, but at the same time, I'm not skipping anything. Right. So we'll take a small break. After the break, we'll move on to retrieve because why we are going to the retrieve without doing update? Update is more complex because you need to retrieve and get the data. So that those data must be edited by the user. So therefore, there's very little possibility that examiner will ask update related question in your A-level paper. Of course, I can do it, but it will be unnecessary burden for you. So therefore, I'm only doing insert, delete, retrieve. So far, in the exam they have asked only about insert and retrieve. They haven't even asked about delete. But there's a high possibility they will ask about delete also, but not about update. But of course, if you are interested, you can go to the W3 schools. It has update related example also, right? But we are going to do only insert delete, which we have already done. And after the break, we are going to do a small example on retrieve, because retrieve is a little bit more interesting and challenging. Okay, so let's continue. Right. So now we move on to our final operation, that is retrieve. Right. Right. I took it for the last because first of all, it is a little bit more coding is required than insert and delete. Second thing is obviously we need some record to retrieve. Now we have some data. So but we have only two records, right? So shall we do another insert? We'll do another insert. And I'll say Rehana, say some password. Okay. Right, pros. Right. So now we have three records. Now we should have three records. Right. How to do the retrieve? So for retrieval, of course, you don't need, we are not doing any search and retrieve that information, right? Rather, we retrieve all the records. Okay, we retrieve all the records. So I will create another PHP file. I'll just copy the insert action file uh, because then I can reuse a lot of. I'll call it retrieve. Retrieve all. That means retrieve all the records. In this case, of course, retrieve all the users. Okay. And retrieve all the users. Right. So again, now there's no submission from form. So therefore I will delete this getting data from the form submission. Still, we need to create the connection and we need to close the connection. So those things we need to do. That is why I just copy paste the code, right? And check the connection error. But this time my SQL is different because to retrieve data, you need to write select statement. Okay, so I'd simply write select. I can even write select all from user, or I'll say select ID. Okay, let's do it in a much readable manner. ID, comma, name, comma. Of course, usually we don't show passwords, but anyway, let's show the password also, right? Password from user, right? No where condition, right? So we want all the records, ID, name, and password fields, right? Now we need to read. Now this is our SQL. Now this time the way we write get the records is because earlier we sent some data. We sent the SQL. We didn't get a response, right? The response is just your true or false. But this time we are going to get some data, right? Get some data. So how to retrieve or get that data? Okay. So now you just call it. Now you just call it, not in a if condition, okay? Not in if condition. So let me delete this. Right. We just call it $con query. I'll just give it a name, $result or something, okay? Because we want to get the result because it gives us sort of a two-dimensional array. So you can even call it $X or $Y, right? Con query, right, not equal to true, just we call it now. Because this time we get a return value. Right. So the result is you can just a variable, even you can say X. Your connection, same method, but just call it. Just call it. So this is your result. But this is an array because you can have one record, two record. If the table has 100 record, you have 100 rows, 100 rows. Okay. So then you need to call this fetch assoc method. This fetch assoc method will take the first record. When you call it again, second record, third record, and so on. Okay, so each row you can get it by calling fetch assoc method. Okay, right. So don't worry, I will gradually explain it because this is sort of a two-dimensional array. But once you call the fetch assoc method, it will give you the first record or the zeroth record. You can give it into another variable, just another name. And now this is your first record. Okay, because this is array. This is a one-dimensional array now, associative array. So you can't echo this, but you can var dump and see. Remember, arrays can be var dump. That is why we discuss all those things. So row, and that will be your first record. So you just execute the query and get it into a variable, but that is a two-dimensional array. When you call the fetch as on that 2D array object, you get the row. And if you call again, you will get the next row, next row, next row. So therefore, this must be your first row. And of course, we close it, right? So we only retrieve the first row now. Now let's see. Refresh. Right. Retrieve all. Right. So why I am getting error? Line number 19, maybe semicolon missing. Line number 19. Con is not there. Con is there. Can anyone see the error message? What is this error is? Undefined constant con on line 90. This is my line 90. So select ID, comma name, comma password from user. That is correct. Then on $con we call the query method giving this SQL, right? And we take it to a variable called result. So let's comment these two lines and see what happens. So then I should not get any error, okay? Let's see. Right, no error. So that means the error must be in this line. Right, so now I got the error. Undefined constant con. This must be $con, right? Not con, $con. Because variables are referred to as dollar. Right, now I got the error. Now I should not get that error. Can see just you need to be, why is that? Unknown column ID. That is correct, right? Because our table has a field called use ID, not ID. Right? So it's called use ID, but I have referred to it as ID. So therefore, that is another error. Right? Use ID. Now that error must not be there. Right? No error. Now we are going to fetch our first row. How to do that? Call the fetch as oak. And then we'll bar dump the first row. First row, it will be a 1D array. It will be a 1D array because it's array, you can't use echo. Okay. And now let's see whether we get the first record. Yes, we got it. You can see ASME ID is 1, user ID 1, username ASME, password is 321. Yes, 1 ASME 321. But that is your first one. So when you call the fetch as awk, it will get the first record. And if you call this fetch as awk again, you will get the second record. So, okay, so whenever you call it, if there's any other record, it gives it. So I can use the same variable name. So now second times I should get the second record. But before that, let's have BR. BR. So every time you call the fetch as awk, you get the next record. So I'm doing this so that you can understand this, right? Gradually. So that is Kamala. So we have another record, right? Yeah. Third time also let's call. I just need copy paste now. So this should also give me another record because there are 3 records. That is Rehana. But next time I should not get a record because that's it. We have consumed all the records, right? So now let's see what happens if I again call it. Because we have only 3 records, but I try to access the 4th record. Right? So it says not. It says not because there's no such thing. Okay. Right. So we can do like that, but this is not practical, right? Because if there are 100 records, we need to call fetch as of 100 times. Right? So that you go to the next record, next record, next record. So therefore, this is what happens actually. Whenever you call the fetch as of, it gives you the record and take the pointer to the next record. But when you don't have any record, so it's not going to return you anything. So therefore, what we can do is because we don't know how many records are there, we can call this in a loop, right? Loop. So we can call this in a while loop. While loop. Okay. So let's do that. While now I'm taking this line to the while loop as a condition. Okay, as a condition. So if there is a record, this will be having the record and also it will be true. When you call the fetch as awk, if you don't get a record, it won't be true and it won't have the data. So when it is not true, you get out of the while loop. Right. So now this row will have the 1D array each time. And in this case, it will execute 3 times and 4th times it will get out of the loop. Right. So let's see whether we can var them. Now we var dump the row because it's 1D array. But make sure you have VR, okay? And then when you don't have any other record, you will get out of the loop because it won't be true. Okay, then it will close the connection. Now let's see. Right, same output. Right, no error, same output. And after 3 times, it has get out of the loop. Or maybe here we can say echo done or something. Just to double check whether you get it there. Yes, done. So this is the way to get your data. Call the fetch as awk method in a while loop. And every time your variable has one dimensional array referring to specific record. Okay. Now we want to display, all right? This is not the way end users will not like to see your data like this. They want to, they like to have the data in a much nice way. So let's make it a little bit nicer, right? So rather than var dump, because this array, right, one-dimensional associative array. Remember we discussed about arrays. We have done all these things, okay? So we discussed about arrays. Remember there's something called associative arrays where we can give index as whatever we need. So basically what happens is when you retrieve data, your server create an array where the index name is your table field name. So therefore index is not 0, 1, 2, 3. Index is user ID, user underscore ID, name, password. Okay. So therefore when you access the data, you must make sure that you access using that index. Okay. So therefore this is how you do it. So rather than var dump, I will only print the names. How to do that? $row. Okay, we will only print the user ID. User underscore ID. Right. And echo BR. BR is take it to the next line. Okay. So this is $row. It's array. It's user ID index because it's associative array, not 0, 1, 2, 3 array. And how do you know this? This is the table's field name. That is how it works. Now I must get your 1, 3, and 4 because I am referring to the user ID type. Right. I'm not getting anything at all. Why is that? It must be echo, right? I forget the echo. Now I can echo because this is individual value. And then the BR. 1, 3, and 4. Obvious, right? 1, 3, and 4. And what about if I need names? Name also. Maybe something like this. Name. The field name is what? Name. If I need password, password. I will have it them in the same line. So that means each record is in the same line, but I will add some separation so that it doesn't show it in the same, something like this. That is just to separate, okay? Any character you can use. I just use the pipe character. Now you should see much better way. Right? Now this is little bit better than previous, right? 1 Smith321, that is password. 3 Kamala, whatever the password. The 4 Rehana, password is Rose and so on. Okay. Right now it's better. And let's get rid of this done. Okay. So that is how you show it. But we can make it little bit better. Right? This is good. Actually, this is better than previous. But we can really make it better by put it into a table. I put it into a table. I put it into a table. But this code is very straightforward. If in the exams, if the examiner says put it into a table, yes, put it into a table. But if the examiner just say show it, this is good enough. This is good enough. Okay. So you just write your select statement, call it, and take into a result, and that call the fetch as soak in a while loop. And it will naturally get out of the while loop when you run out of the records. Okay. Right. So I will not change this one. I will just keep this because this is the simple example to understand how to retrieve data. But now I will take a copy of this. And I will take a copy of this. This is called retrieve all. I'll call this retrieve all display table. Right? Retrieve all and display it in a table. That means I'm going to make this little bit nicer. This is good, but this is going to be better. I'm changing the next one. Don't worry, I will share you the code at the end of the session. Right. Now what we are going to do is we are going to put it into a table. Right. So these must be different TDs and each iteration must be a TR so that it will be much nicer. Right. How to do that? I will have the table tag because now we are in a, remember now we are in the PHP block, right? You can't just write table tag. Everything must be echo. So I will say table, right? At the beginning. At the end, I need to close the table tag. So I'm just thinking and writing, right? I'm not just memorizing. So now I have the table tag, table start, table ends. But in between, we are now having some data. But that is not going to work, right? So each of these must be in a row. Each iteration must be a new row. And also let's show the table's border. Border equal. Remember, we are already in a double quotes. Therefore, make sure you use single quotes. Right. Now we have the table close. Now in this loop, we must start at TR. It must be a echo. Look at the logic, okay? Because every record is a TR, table row. And at the end, you need to close the TR. Right. Rather than BR, now I call it TR. Because you start a TR, end a TR. Right. So every row is a TR. Then every data must be in a TD. In a TD. So every TR will have three TDs. So how to make it TD? So before this, you must have the start in TD. After this, you must have the end in TD. So let's have it. TD and concatenation. And here we close TD. Okay. I will copy paste. What happened to my closing tag? Right? Right. So this is my start in TD. This is my end in TD. And this is my content. First TD is use ID, name, and password. So no need of this, right? This must be dot. Why do I know? Right, now it is correct. Right, now it is correct. Okay. So TR, end of TR, inside TR, you have, okay, why this echo is not correct? This is wrong, right? Right, now it's correct. So TR, and every TR has three TDs. Start TD, end TD, start TD, end TD, start TD, end TD, and you have the three data values. So now it should be much nicer formatted because we have put it into a nice table. Okay, nice table. Now let's see how it looks. It should look much better than previous this one. Okay, so let's refresh. Right, retrieve all display table. Okay, and so that is much better, right? So that is much. So what about this comma? So where is this comma coming from? That is coming from this comma. That is my mistake. Okay. Right. Now I should not get any comma. Right. So that is much better, but there's no table header, right? Table header. Let's have a table header also, right? To make it nice. Right. So let's have a table header. I'll write it as another echo. I'll hard code the first tr, tr, and I can go for td or th. I think th is better, right? So let's have three th, because th will be nicer. Three th, two, three, and the first one I will call it id. Next one I will start, end, start, end, start, end, and that's it. Right. First one is ID. Second one I will call name. Third one I will call TR. Sorry, TH. Sorry, this is TR. So, oh, sorry, this is my TH. TH, THN, TH. Right. So this is second TH, THN, and this is my last TH password. I hard coded it, but this is dynamically created. But this must also be echo because you are in a PHP, right? So this TR is the first row, but these are depending on your records. Okay. Right now we are done. And let's have a small heading also, right? Let's say echo maybe H3 users. Just to make it nicer. And this is where you start your table and end your table. Okay. Then this is each row. This is hard coded first row because it's your headings. Now it's better. And if you have another record here, okay, so let's add another record. Now we have only three records. Let's insert a record. Say Ravi. See, let's say March as the password. Right now, if I retrieve all and in a table, so now you can see. So this is normal expectation. You put it into a table also. I put it into a table. Right. Any questions? We discuss how to insert, how to delete, and how to retrieve. The last one is the retrieve, and also we put it into a nice table also. So the previous example, we just retrieve it, but not put it into a good formatting. But next we make it much better look and feel also. And examiner can ask anything else because examiner can check whether you can think. You can think, right? That's all. That's all about database connectivity. So you must know how to insert, how to delete, how to retrieve. Update I did not do because even examiner has not asked delete so far. Examiner only ask about insert and retrieve. But there's a high chance examiner will ask about delete. Because examiner will not ask the same thing over and over, right? Right. So shall we look at some second paper questions? Let me share you the code. Now I will share you the entire code. Database code is here. Make sure you create the table, okay? Otherwise it won't work. And make sure you change your connection depending on your database names, right? And make sure you use the correct table name, or if you use a different table name, just change it. Different field name, change it. I made use ID auto number. That is why I did not insert use ID. Otherwise, you need to ask the user to enter the use ID also, right? So just keep those things in mind. And if you get any error, any issue, just send me a message. I can help you. I can help you, right? Don't worry, this is online, but online I can help you. Whatever the physical class teacher can help you, I can help you, right? Even I can remotely log into your laptop and see what is your error is, right? I can remotely log into your laptop if you give me the permission for that particular session. So that is how we help students who are doing BIT degree program. So you guys also, if you have any issue, any error that you can't resolve, say your MySQL database is not startup, or when you create your PHP file, you get error and you can't understand what is the error, just send me the message with error code. Most of the time, I should be able to give you the solution. If in the last solution is very rarely that it happens, I will ask you to enable your desktop connectivity. I will log in and you can see what I'm looking at, and I will see what is your exact issue is. Okay, right. So let's look at a few past paper questions. Let me give you the code first. Okay, I'll give you the full code. Today's code is under DB folder. Okay, that is why we access it as local loss A-level ICT 25/DB. Okay, because I just put it into a separate folder because there are related things. Okay, so I will zip it. Make sure you download and keep this code. Okay, sometimes otherwise WhatsApp delete the files after some time. So of course, at any time if you lose it again, send me a message. I will share it again. Don't worry. I am here to help you guys. Right? Actually, the purpose of WhatsApp group is giving you the help, but very strange that no one is asking help, right? So the purpose of WhatsApp group is give you 24 hours, 365 help the students, but very strangely in your batch, no one ask any help, right? But especially the BIT students, so they have a lot of problems, they have questions, right? So you can see they are keep having some conversations with me, right, to solve their issues. But you guys seems to be very, right? Sometimes there are so many issues that I can't answer. I don't have time to answer them because they are having so many issues. Okay, you can see some connectivity issues and so. Right. So let me zip it and give it to you. Right. Make sure you unzip it. Other thing is we have started the 2027 class. It's on Fridays, 4 to 6. If anyone is interested, or if you have any friends or anyone, right? Of course, we are not interested in 27. So ask them to send me a message, or if you go to the Aurora CS uh, page, A-level ICT. So there's a WhatsApp group for them. Just ask them to log into the WhatsApp group and send me a message, or send me a message. I will share them. It's basically Fridays. Uh, Fridays, 4 to 6, just like your class. Your class is Thursdays. That class is in Fridays. Okay, so just pass that message also if anyone is interested. Okay. Actually, we started about 3 weeks ago. Now we are in the first topic. Okay. Right. So let's take few past paper questions. Maybe one question today. Because now we are pretty much into the past paper mode. Right. 1 hour past paper, 1 hour rest of the topic. E-business is a very small topic. Okay. But next week, I will tell you which past paper we are doing. Probably we can start with 2020 24 paper, MCQ paper, right? And we'll go backward, 2024 backward. Okay. MCQ is structured essay, essay. then 2023 MCQ structured essay. Okay. And while we do that, we will do the rest of the topics as well. Okay. So therefore, it will be half 50% paper class, 50% theory class. Okay. After sometimes it is 100% paper class. Right. So this is 2023. I'm just going to show you what kind of question they ask. Okay. Right. Right. So the first part now you can do, it's related to this form. You need to fill certain part. Okay. Uh, Make sure you do it by yourself. And what about the second part? So this is the entire question, right? Question number 1A. Question number 1B, it's related to HTML. It's HTML, right? We have discussed this part. You just need to figure out what is A, what is B, what is C, okay? Rather than, right. Now this is the action page PHP file mentioned in the given code. That means this is submitted to the action page PHP, right? So it has even radios, right? So see whether how it is done. Object-oriented way, right? So rather than hard coding these things, they have taken it to variables, server name, username, password. We just hard coded it, right? We just hard coded it. So then server name is localhost, username is root, password is blank, and the database name is environment. Okay, it doesn't matter, right? It is they are username passwords. So they have taken it from post. Each and every variable they have taken it from post. Then they have written insert statement. Insert statement, they have not mentioned the field names. That means you rely on the table structure. Right? Table structure. No, they have mentioned that field name, gender, district, email. So the values are $name, $gender, $district, $email, and $newsletter. So they are all taken from $_post because this should be then post. Right? So then method must be post. So that is one of the question, right? How do you know that it is post? Because here you are taking it from $_post. So then, right, already you have get the connection. So in that example, or in that question paper, they have not checked whether the connection has error. That is fine. So we remember we everywhere check whether connection has errors. But in that exam paper question, the examiner has not checked whether this connection has errors. That is fine because that is examiner wanted to make it so shorter. So then you have created your SQL statement with values as these, your variables, and you have executed. There I check whether it is true or false, just like what we did. And if there is an error, $con.error. So error property has the error. And now this one is, they have closed the connection using old approach. That is pretty bad actually. So they should have closed the connection like this. Okay. Like this, but just remember this is another way of closing the connection. So this is the better way because you create a MySQL object. But if you go to the W3 schools, say let's go to the insert. Now remember, this is how we work with object-oriented manner. So this is how you create object. You check your connection errors and blah, blah, blah using this notation. And finally, we close like this. Right? So then we have the procedural method where you create a connection like this rather than new keyword. There's a method called MySQL connect. And then it's completely different story. In that case, you close like this. But the examiner has done is actually examiner has done a wrong thing. Examiner has created the connection in object-oriented manner like this and close the connection like this. Right? So create the connection using the object-oriented approach. Close the connection using the procedural approach. Actually, that is the examiner's has made a mistake. Sometimes examiner make this mistake all the time. Okay. So therefore, anyway, don't worry because this line is basically closing the connection. The other way of closing the connection. Now you need to write down the purpose of section P and section Q. So section P, it's retrieving your data, submitted data, form submission data. Right? Section Q, just you need to write the purpose. Section Q, okay, what is section Q from where to where? Yeah, probably this, right? So section Q, this is the end of the section Q, right? So section Q start, section Q end. So section Q create the SQL statement, insert SQL statement. So you just need to write it create the insert SQL statement from the retrieved data because it's executed after this, right? You can say creation of the then as right. That's it actually, right? That's it. So therefore, examiner has not asked you to write the code. Examiner just asks what you are doing here, what you are doing here. Of course, in some class papers, they examiner asks more details than that. Right. Okay. Right. So let's look at one more paper. That is 2023. Let's say with the 2022 also had a PHP question. Not every year you have PHP. Some years you have PHP. Okay. Right. So this one has a PHP question, but it has nothing to do with the database connection. It's just getting values. Okay. Getting values. So let's look at one more paper. Maybe 2021. Usually PHP questions are in structured essay. Right. So there's HTML question, just normal form. Right. No PHP question. No PHP question, just HTML. But there can be PHP question in the MCQs. Right. What about 2020? Right. So there's a PHP question. Right. So again, creating the connection. So they have mixed it actually. You can see the connection error is checked. And you can see this is basically what I skip that part. Before doing this loop, you can check whether how many rows are there. If no rows are there, you can skip it. Actually, I forget to explain about that. Okay. So here, right? So before doing the loop, you can check whether we have more than one record, right? We have more than one record. So how to do that? You can just have a if condition and say whether this number of rows is greater than zero. So let's add that also for our code also. The result is number of rows is greater than zero only. We do this loop. We do this loop. So this while loop, I can take it here now. Simple as that. Okay. So that means if your number of rows is not greater than zero, you don't come into the while loop because no point. So we can do the same thing in our table example also. Okay. This one also. We will check whether the number of rows is greater than zero. If so, we will do the loop. Right. So that is just make it better. Okay. Right. Now again, let's check whether this work. Otherwise, right. Retrieve all, yes, working. Retrieve all, yes, working. Now I need to again zip and give it back to you, right? Because uh, I add some more code. Right. Use this one, okay, because it has that part also. Right, use the second one, not the first one. Okay. First one, maybe I can delete. Right, use the new one. Right, we stop at this point. From next week, we will be moving to past paper 1 hour, theory 1 hour. Okay. So definitely the first hour is past paper, second hour is theory because we are giving more priority to do the past papers. Okay, first hour is past paper, and we start with 2023 MCQ paper. Right. Fine. So we will do whatever possible during the first hour, then we stop it, and then we'll move on to e-business topic, and that is how we are going to do. Right. So then the MCQ is over, we will go to the structured paper, then the second paper. Okay. Right. We stop at this point, right? Thank you.